Okay, so we're back in our code editor, and I'm located in lecture 45 folder, which is located in fullstack-course 5 examples folder. And here I opened up the readme.txt that tells us that code for the entire application code that we're actually going to be testing is copied directly from lecture 25. So you can look at that lecture if you want to see it running in the original state. Here we're going to take a look as to what that code does. And basically it has a controller here that uses this menu category service, and this menu category service reaches out to this API base, which is this URL right here. If we scroll down, you'll see this menu category service, and basically it allows us to pull categories of different items within the restaurant menu, and we use this API base path because we inject it together with our $HTTP service into our menu category service. So that in fact is the service we want to test. And for this short lecture, we're just going to test one method, which is get menu categories. And what we want to get out of it is to make sure that we set it up properly such that we pass back the response that is returned with the data from the server. So the way we're going to do this, let's go to menu categories.service.spec.js. That's the file that we are writing our test in. And let's take a look as to how we set it up. The first thing we're doing here is we're calling the before each, and we're injecting our module, our application module, menu categories app. That's the same one that we came from, the main one from the application we're testing. The next thing we're going to do is inject the $injector service. Using that service, we can now call the get method and literally pull out all the things we want to pull out from the Angular context. And one of them is the menu category service itself that we're testing. Notice we're just saving it off as a variable inside our describe that we can then reference inside of our it test method. Notice that we also are not injecting anything manually inside the menu category service, even though it requires some injections. We don't need to do that. Angular will take care of that for us automatically. We also need the $HTTP backend, so we can use that to mock out our requests. And we also need the API base path, and that's what was defined right here as a constant, because we need to reuse that when we make our fake or mocked out network calls. Okay, once we expose those three things outside of our before each, we can then use it inside the test method. And you can see here the HTTP backend, we're using the when-get, and we're basically compiling this URL. We're saying API base path plus the /categories. And if you take a look into our app and scroll down to the actual method we're testing right here, get menu categories, it is the API base path plus /categories.json, and which is exactly what we're doing here. /categories.json, and then we're telling it when that call gets made, go ahead and intercept it and respond with an array that just has two things, lunch and dessert strings. That's really what we want. We want to make sure it's set up properly. Once we set this up, we can then call menu categories.get menu categories, and we know that that returns a promise because the HTTP service returns a promise. And we're saying that we're going to catch that promise in the then function, and we're going to grab the response. And the response is response.data. The data of the response is actually sitting inside the data property. And depending, of course, on your response, it might be a little bit different. You might be just passing the data directly out of the get menu categories. But in our case, we passed the entire response out. That might have been a mistake, but it is what it is now. Okay, so we're checking now and expecting that response.data is equal to what we basically told it to send back, which is lunch and dessert as an array. And then, of course, we want to make sure not to forget, since this is an asynchronous call, we want to go ahead and flush it right away. So basically, it will behave like a synchronous call. So let's save it. Let's go back to our browser. And let's click, I already started the browser sync. So let's click on our test runner. And you can see should return categories list is executing properly. And we're seeing 0 failures. So we're all good to go.